A very good afternoon to all of you. I'm Dr. Sonali, here with the topic of research methods on discriminant analysis and cluster analysis. Hope I'm audible. Okay, thank you so much. Now, to start with cluster analysis or discriminant analysis, you need to have an idea what exactly is this statistical analysis. Because we are talking something about the statistical analysis, usually two things we do. That is, one is descriptive analysis and the other one is inferential analysis. Now, in descriptive analysis and in both in inferential analysis, what we deal is with two types of variables. One is a univariate and the other one is a multivariate analysis. Now, in univariate analysis, we deal only with a single variable. But in a multivariate analysis, we deal with more than two or more than two variables. Now, in this case, when we are planning to have a descriptive analysis, in descriptive analysis, again, it can be represented in a graphical manner, as well as we can also have some numericals on it. Now, if you want to have a numerical values on a univariate data, we can have this location, dispersion, skewness, kurtosis. Now, these are the operations that we can do on a numerical things. On the graphical side, if you want to see the graphical representation, we can see the stem and the leaf, the box plot, histogram, frequency polygon, tables are some of the representation in which you can graphically represent the data. Now coming to the multivariate data. Now in case of a descriptive analysis, when it is a multivariate data, we always go for scatter plot or data plot for the graphical representation. And for the numerical, we always go ahead with covariance and correlation. Now in the inferential part, when we want to have some inference. Now what is the basic difference between a descriptive and an inferential? In a descriptive thing, we simply summarize. But in an inferential data, we always provide an inference. That means it is a summarization along with interpretation. Now in the interpretation, again, there are two kinds of variables. One is univariate and the other one is multivariate. Now in this case, some of the most common methods of testing is finding out the mean, variance, proportion, and using ANOVA. Now with the multivariate analysis, there are a lot of analysis, like finding out the association, correlation, regression, correspondence analysis, cluster analysis, discriminant analysis, factor analysis, MANOVA, MANCOVA, and some multi-level analysis. Now out of these, today I am just going to touch upon the discriminant analysis and the cluster analysis. Now some of the softwares which are used in which you can readily go for the statistical analysis. These are your SPSS, your SAS, your Minitab, R. There are other softwares also. Now we'll start. Now let me say you this, that we are going to have a hands-on also with this discriminant analysis. That means I'll show you how to, first I'll tell you the theories on the discriminant analysis, and after that, I'll give you a hands-on on the discriminant analysis. Then we'll have a cluster analysis. I'll tell you the details about the cluster analysis, and along with that, I'll also show you three kinds of cluster analysis so that it is useful. So after that, maybe we can take the questions. Now to start with this discriminant analysis. Now both this discriminant analysis or the cluster analysis, they are methods of classification. That means we classify the data or we classify the groups. We find out the groups or we find out the clusters. Now let us first talk about the discriminant analysis, which is otherwise also known as the canonical variate analysis. Now obviously this is a multivariate technique. Now in this what we do is we classify a set of observations into some predefined groups. But in this case, the only thing that we know is the number of classification is known to us. That means if suppose I'm talking about having a high, that means if I'm having a customer satisfaction as a variable, I know my customer satisfaction either it will be high or it will be low. So in that case, these two are the predefined groups. So in a discriminant analysis, the groups are already defined. Now, why do we need this discriminant analysis? We can simply do the classification just looking at the data. When it is one variable, when it is two variables, it is easier. When it is a number of variables, it will be difficult for our human eye to discriminate and to classify. So that is how, in order to divide the entire group into homogeneous group, which are homogeneous within. That means they have similar features or similar characteristics within the group, and they are different from the other groups. So this discriminant analysis will help in that. Now in this case, the major thing is, now you must be saying this, well, again, this classification can also be done with ANOVA, with regression. Then why this discriminant analysis? The basic reason why we are having this discriminant analysis is with the dependent variable and the independent variable. Now here, the independent variable is metric data, which is in form of either ratio or interval, and the dependent variable is always a categorical data. That means it can be a dichotomous, like bad or good, high or low, or it can be a multichotomous also. That means having more than 2, 3 or more than it. So in that case, like low, medium and high. So that is an example of multichotomous. So in both the cases, we can go only for categorical data in case of discriminant analysis, or in case of your dependent variable. Now, when you are having only 2 groups or 2 category, now we can go ahead with the linear discriminant analysis. But when we are having more than 3, that means in the same case, the same example that I gave, that is your low, medium and high, in that case, we can go for multiple discriminant analysis. The same thing that I was saying, when you can do the same thing with ANOVA, regression and discriminant, that is the number of dependent variables is always 1 and the number of independent variables are multiple. So in this case, why do we need discriminant analysis? Now that is because the basic difference is in the independent and the dependent variable. In ANOVA, the independent variable is categorical and the dependent variable is metric. In regression, we can have both, but in discriminant analysis, it takes just the opposite of ANOVA. That is, the categorical data is dependent variable and the metric data is independent variable. Now in discriminant analysis, if you look at the right side, this is what we are going to have a look in SPSS. This is the output, this is the demo output of one canonical discriminant analysis. Now in this discriminant analysis, we'll be having different features. Now based on these values, features that is written, the first one is eigenvalue value. Now this eigenvalue value gives the index of overall fit. Now how fit is your model? The next one is the box-M test. In order to test the null hypothesis, because we always have a null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis whenever we are planning for a hypothesis testing. Now with discriminant analysis, if you are planning to go ahead with your hypothesis testing, then this box-M test is important. The next one is Wilks lambda. In this Wilks lambda, it shows the percentage of variability. That means if your Wilks lambda value is lower, that means it is more discriminant towards the function. That means your dependent variable is a more discriminant function towards your independent variable. Now the next one is canonical correlation. It's the correlation between your independent variable and the dependent variable. It shows the correlation between the predictors as well as the discriminant function. That also we will see once we see an example, you will be clear on it. And the next thing which is there is your F value. The higher the F value, the better is the discriminant function. So this F values plays an important role whenever we are planning to go for discriminant analysis. Now with all these details, we will stop this discriminant analysis. Now let us move to cluster analysis. Now when we talk about cluster analysis, the word cluster, that means we are trying to group, we are trying to classify. In this cluster analysis, actually I cannot say this cluster analysis as a inferential tool because this is something, a pre-processing step. This can enable you to go ahead with other multivariate analysis. This alone, this cluster analysis alone do not give you any inferences. But yes, definitely it will put a foundation for your next analysis. That means this cluster analysis is a standalone tool in which you can actually get an insight into your data. What exactly your data says. Now this is mostly used in the pilot study. In a pilot study, when we are doing analysis, we always check for whatever is our requirement, whether we are getting that or not. So in that case, this cluster analysis will be useful. Now again, it does the same thing. It classifies your data into different groups or into different clusters. Now what it does basically is a large set of data is there. It divides into several subgroups or several objects. Now in the figure that you see, there are circles, there are pentagons, there are moon-shaped structures, then there is triangles, and there are rectangles. Now in this case, obviously identified with the color, you can see all these objects are with different colors. So it is easy to identify. Now you can do this with your human eye, but what happens when all this data goes to a computer? Now it requires an algorithm. That means there is some mechanism which is going behind this cluster analysis. So let us check out what is there in this cluster analysis and how this SPSS or how these tools they use to go for this analysis. Now the major problem here is in the discriminant analysis we already saw that the number was defined because we were saying okay it will be low or high, it will be high, medium or low. But in this case the discriminant analysis, in this cluster analysis we do not know how many groups exactly we are going to get. That means it depends on your number of variables. It depends on many other factors based on which you can find out the number of your groups, that how many clusters are divided. And here one of the major problem is outliers. When the outliers are there, it also considers the outliers in this analysis, which might result in a problem at a later point of view. Now, when we are talking about clustering, now this clustering is done in three phases. The first phase is the hierarchical cluster analysis. The second one is non-hierarchical analysis, and the third one is the combination of both. That means both the hierarchical as well as the non-hierarchical. Now, in this hierarchical analysis, we have again two types of analysis. One is the agglomerative, and the other one is divisive. Now in SPSS, if you see to your right, in SPSS, this hierarchical cluster analysis is done it is given by the terminology hierarchical. The non-hierarchical cluster analysis is done by the k-means hierarchical analysis. And the combination of both the methods is a two-step analysis. Well, this two-step analysis will be very, very easier because it's in a format of a report. You can directly download the things. It is mostly on a fact that it will look like a figure or it will look like a diagram, which is easier to understand. So this combination of both methods, which is a two-step hierarchical method, will seem a bit easier to you all. Now, before going to all this analysis, let us first understand what is the mechanism behind. Now, coming to the hierarchical clustering, what exactly is this agglomerative or this divisive? Obviously, the name suggests, now divisive means you are trying to divide, and agglomerative means you are trying to collate or you are trying to put things together. Now in this hierarchical cluster analysis, we also have a graphical representation. Now this graphical representation is known as dendrogram. We'll see what exactly is a dendrogram. Now in this HCA or the hierarchical cluster analysis, the good part is it can only take sample size till 1000, not more than that. But in the non-hierarchical cluster analysis, it is suitable for more than 1000 samples. If you are doing a study for your empirical or for your SIP project or any other projects, then obviously this hierarchical cluster analysis is better for your pilot study. So based on which you can go ahead with your full-scale administration. Now in this So with this, let us see what exactly is the agglomerative or divisive method. I told you also about the dendrogram. If you see the last picture, in the dendrogram, now suppose imagine there are 6 data points, A, B, C, D, E, and F. Now with the 6 data points, now easily if I ask you to cluster them or to make them a group, now what you will do is you will look for the two things which are the two objects or the two letters which are closer to each other. Obviously, it seems that E and F and A and B are closer to each other. So what you will do is A and B and E and F, you will club together. So when A and B are clubbed together, this is the first cluster that we are getting. Now E and F, we are clubbing together. This is also the second cluster that we are getting. Now after E and F, if you see the proximity or the distance between C, D, E and F and A and B, you will find it is more towards E and F. The distance between CD and EF is closer to E and F rather than A and B. So in that case, what you will do is with this EF which you have made a cluster, now you will find which is closer, whether D is closer or whether C is closer. Now this is according to the human eye. The same way it works also with this software. Now with E and F, it finds that the D is closer. So it takes into account D, and the next cluster that is found, that is E, F, and D. So now this combination, now this becomes the third cluster, that is DEF together. Now with this DEF, where it calculates the distance from A and B, and it also calculates the distance from C. Now C looks closer. So in that case, it matches with C, and then it again forms a group that is C, D, E, and F. Now once that is done, what it does is, now it finds the next cluster, and the only cluster that is left is A and B. So in this case, what we are doing is we are collating all these points together into one cluster. Now coming to this agglomerative clustering. Now this agglomerative clustering means we are trying to merge the clusters. That means individual clusters are there, we are trying to merge them. But the divisive clustering is just the opposite. That means a group is there, you are trying to divide into smaller clusters. Hope all of you got this, that agglomerative and divisive, they are opposite to each other. In agglomerative, you merge the clusters. In divisive, you divide the cluster or you split the cluster. Now in this case, if you notice the figure of agglomerative clustering, in the step 0, if you see it starts with the step 0. That means individual E1, E2, E3 and E4 are there. Now what it does is it starts clubbing them. E1 and E2 are clubbed together. Now after that E1, E2 and E3 are clubbed together. Now E4 is clubbed together with E1, E2 and E3. And finally we get our final cluster, that is E1, E2, E3 and E4. And with this divisive clustering, we start with a combination, or we start with a cluster. A big cluster is there. Then we try to divide it into multiple clusters. Hope all of you are clear with this agglomerative clustering and divisive clustering. Now with this, how is it divided? How does the picture look like? Tell me, what do you see with this picture? Yes, any guesses? Any guesses? What does this picture shows? Hairstyles, 3 and 4 are alike. Similarity. Yes? 5 and 6 are alike. Similarities between hairstyles. Okay. Okay, fine. All of you are right. Now there is a similarity. Yes, if you see the picture in the top and just below it, you see a similarity between both of them. The hairstyles of the dog and the persons are similar. Now in this case, this is what is the mechanism behind our cluster analysis. Now this is based on similar and distance. If you look at both the pictures, they look similar or they look alike, but there is a huge distance between them because the first one is person and the second one is animal. So there is a huge distance, but the thing that is common is they are similar. Their hairstyles are similar. So with this concept, we'll go ahead with the distance measurement. Because when we know the concept that, okay, it is based on similarity and distance, so let us first measure the distance. Now for measuring the distance, there are different ways. Now why I'm discussing all these things? Because these are the important things that you will be noticing in SPSS. Once you are going ahead with SPSS, you should be knowing which distance method to use and where to use. And what does this distance method? It highlights. Now based on that, we'll start with the first thing, which is the most easiest thing, that is the Euclidean distance. Hope you see this picture here, this Euclidean distance. Now this Euclidean distance is the minimum distance or the minimal distance between any 2 points. If these two are the points, then the minimal distance between them, that is known as the Euclidean distance. Now this is the simplest distance measurement technique. The next one is the Manhattan distance. That means these persons, these two objects are here. Now if you want to connect them, this takes the form of a canonical x and y coordinates. That means if this is your x, this is your y coordinate and this is your x coordinate, it cannot go directly, rather it will cover the x coordinate till here and then it will cover the y coordinate. So this is your Manhattan distance. Now coming to the Chebyshev distance, or this is also known as the chessboard distance. Hope you remember the way the king walks or the king moves in a chess. In that case, it can only move one step. That means if you want to reach from point A to point B, there are different methods in which you can reach. The first one is you will reach from step 1, you will go through step 2, and then only you can go to step 3. So this is the way a king walks in a chessboard game. So the same way this Chebyshev distance is also calculated. That means it can move only one step ahead. And this Minkowski distance, now this is something which is considered in a 3-dimensional. Because all these things that we have discussed, these are in 2-dimensional. Now when it is a 3-dimensional distance, hope you see this in this graph, this is a jump like this. Because it considers the 3 coordinates. And the last one, which is the cosine similarity. That means we consider this angle between them. If I want to consider the distance between this object and this object, that means I need to consider the angle between them. And this cos theta is represented with a distance. So this is how all the distances are measured in SPSS. So that is how we discussed about the distance measurement things. Now the next thing is, how do they measure the distance? If these are the distance, these are the ways in which distance are measured, what is the distance methods that they are using? Well, there are 5 types of distance measurement methods. The first one is a single linkage. If you look at the right side picture, you can notice if suppose there is a red color cluster, there is a yellow color cluster, and this blue color is an outlier. In this case, if you want to have distance, you want to calculate the distance between the red cluster and the yellow cluster, what you can do is, there are different methods you can do it. The first thing is you will find out the closest of both the clusters. The closest object in both the cluster. In this case, this is the closest, and in this case, in the yellow case, this is the closest. Now, when you connect both these things, now this is the distance which is measured by the single linkage distance method. The next one is finding out the farthest method. That means finding out the farthest distance. Now, in the second case, you find that this is again a cluster, this is again a cluster. You find out the farthest distance between both the objects. The third one is, what you try to do is, you find out individually with this first red color object, you find out the distance with all these yellow color objects. And you find out the average. Again, with the second red one, you find out all the averages. So like this, you will be finding out all the distances between all these points. After finding out the differences or after finding out the distances, what you will do is, you will calculate the average of it. Now that gives you the average linkage. The next one is the centroid method. In centroid method, what you do is, now this is a cluster and this is a cluster. In this first cluster, you find out the center of it. That is the centroid. And in this cluster, you find out again the centroid. Now with this, you find out the minimum distance that is between the center. Now if you calculate the centers of both these things, now that gives you the distance between the centroids. So this is your centroid method. And the last one is the Watts method. Now the centroid method and the Watts method, these are the 2 common methods that is readily used in this SPSS for doing our calculations. And the Watts method, what it does is, now this is the method in which it actually minimizes the variance. That means within a cluster, what it does is, it minimizes the distance. Now suppose what it will do is, the first red object and the second red object, it will find out the variance. The lowest variance that it will get, it will only consider that value. It will not consider the highest values. Now suppose with this red color, it will find out the variances with the other 3 red colors. Yes, so that means in this cluster, the first red object is going to find out the average of all this, going to find out the variance of all these things. Now after that, finding out the average, you find out which one is the minimum. The minimum of this cluster is considered in red color. Similarly, in the yellow color also, they'll find out the minimum of the variance. After both the minimum things are there, then it will try to connect. So that distance is calculated by the Watts method. Now when we are discussing about cluster analysis and discriminant analysis, we might be aware about the factor analysis. Now you might think that the cluster analysis and the factor analysis does the same thing. The cluster analysis also divides into groups. Even in the factor analysis, they also group. But the factor analysis, it groups based on your variations. It is based on the correlation and the covariance. But in cluster analysis, it is always based on the distance. That is the proximity. Based on the similarity, based on the proximity, and based on the distance. So this is the basic difference between cluster analysis and the factor analysis. And coming down to the cluster analysis and discriminant analysis, in cluster analysis, the groups are not given. That means you don't know how many groups you'll be or how many clusters you'll be finding out after the analysis. But in discriminant analysis, you already have to fix how many groups are there. So this is more like an exploratory analysis and this is more like a confirmatory analysis. Your discriminant analysis is more like confirmatory and your cluster analysis is more like exploratory. Now with this, we have completed a brief discussion on cluster analysis and discriminant analysis. I'd like to show you the demo of both of this in SPSS. Hope for everybody this SPSS demo data is visible. Okay, fine. Now in this case, I have taken an example. Now the example is on electric vehicles. Now this is a hypothetical data set that I have considered. Now on what basis you go for buying an electric vehicle? I have taken 3 categorical data, that is your occupation, gender, your buying intention, as well as the brand. That means the brand names. I have taken all the electric vehicle names, that is according to them, what is the best preference or what is the most preferred brand according to these persons. Now this data set consists of 5 other independent variables. That means, and what I'm saying is your buying intention is dependent on brand reputation, speed of the vehicle, speed of the electric vehicle, on the number of advertisements, on the safety measures that is given by the electric vehicles, and the number of charging stations which are available. Now, based on this, I have considered their gender and I have also considered their occupation, whether they are working in private organizations or they are working in government organizations. Now, based on this, if you want to check the variable view, I have considered 4 of this data as nominal data and the others are in scale format. In occupation, again, the values are given, like the female is given with 1 and the male is 2. And with all other independent variables, it is from strongly agree, strongly disagree to strongly agree. With the buying intention, I have considered two groups. That is, one is low buying intention and the high buying intention. Now, these are the 2 things which will be helpful in discriminant analysis. Hope you remember in discriminant analysis, we are going to categorize or we are going to group from the very beginning. So this is how we are going to group. Now, in this case, let us go ahead with the analysis. Now, we have to go for analyze, classify, and in classify, we have this discriminant analysis. Just take it back. Okay, fine. So all my variables are available in this box. Now, in this case, the grouping variable and the independent variable. That means all the independent variables. In this case, what I want is, I want to see the independent variables, that is brand reputation, speed, advertisements, safety measures, or these charging stations. What is the impact on the buying intention? That means how many are having low buying intention, how many are having high buying intention. So I want to check which are the functions or which are the discriminant functions which has got more impact on this buying intention. Out of these 5 independent variables, which has got more impact on this buying intention. So based on this, what I'll do is I'll consider all these independent variables and I'll consider the buying intention in the grouping variable. Now, once I give it in the grouping variable, I told you we have to define the range, or that means I have to define how many groups are there. So in this case, I want, because I have considered 1 and 2, so I'll give the same values here. Now with this, we'll check with the first option, that is statistics. Now in the statistics, by default, everything will be unticked. So what we can do is, we want the means of it, we want the univariate ANOVA, we want the box-M for hypothesis testing. In the function coefficient, we would like to take the FISs and the unstandardized. And in the matrices, we would take the within group correlation. Why I'll take this, I'll tell you just in a second. Now in this classify, in the prior probabilities, we treat that there are two cases. The first thing is either you treat that all the groups are equal. That means you know already the number of the people in both the groups will be equal, or else you can ask it to compute from the group sizes. That means it will compute for you, saying that what is the group which is in the low buying intention group and which is in the high buying intention group. So let me consider this one, because I don't consider all my groups will be equal. Now it will be using the covariance matrix within the groups. In the plots, if I want to see the combined groups or separate groups, that means separate for individual groups, there will be plots. If I combine them together, both the plots, that means for high and low together, I can see. And this territorial map is again a pictorial representation in which we can see these plots. So let me consider the separate groups and territorial maps. Now in this case, in display, you can see there is a case-wise results. That means if you want to limit your cases to first few, then you can go ahead with this option. Now, if you want a summary table of the discriminant analysis, you can go ahead with a summary table. And this leave one out classification is, I'll show you what this leave one out classification is. Now, we do not have a missing value, so we did not click on this, replacing the missing values with mean. That means if any of them are missing values, then obviously it will be replaced by the mean if you click on this. Now, with this, we click on continue. Now, the third option is save. If you want to save any of this, the first one is a predicted group membership. In a predicted group membership, if you want to see like which group do they belong. Now suppose there are two groups, one is high and the other one is low. If I click on this, the final membership or the final discriminant function that will be found, it will come in your data set. Along with all these variables from occupation till buying intention, you see the data set is already here. And along with this, you will find some more features. If you click on both of this, let me check with this discriminant scores as well as with the predicted group membership. So I click on continue. Hope you can see this. Now this is the output that we will be receiving after doing this discriminant analysis. The first one is the analysis of case processing summary. That means a total number of 160 cases are there, or 160 respondents are there, out of which there is no missing value or there is no out of range codes. There is no missing value, so that is how all these things are 0. And the final is we are getting all the 160 as valid output. The next one is the group statistics. That means with the buying intention, if you see this is the buying intention. The first one is low buying intention. The next one is high buying intention. Now it will have individual relationship with all these independent variables, and it will give us the mean and the standard deviation. And it will also give us the valid and that is the valid population, like how many of them are in low groups and how many of them are in high group. So in this low buying intention, you can see a total of 111 samples are there, and in the high group there are 49 samples. Now with this, if you check with the mean, in the low buying intention, in the brand reputation, you see it is 3.94. But in this high buying intention, in the brand reputation, you see 3.67. That means those who have an intent to buy, that means those who are having a high intention to buy, the mean is less. And in the low buying intention, the mean is more. Now I think the same with all other variables, speed, advertisements. Here the values are more accepting this advertisements. The advertisements is 3.44 here, and in low it is 3.54. So you have an interpretation based on this group statistics. Now the next one is test of equality of group means. Either you can check this, the Wilks lambda. Now this Wilks lambda, the higher the value of Wilks lambda, it is not a better discriminant function. So for being a discriminant function or a more powerful discriminant function, the Wilks lambda value should be around 0.5 or less than it. The lesser the value of Wilks lambda, the better is your significance. So that is how if you check the significance level here, you see we have considered 95%. So according to it, it should be less than, according to the significance level, it should be less than 0.05. So if you check the first one in the brand reputation, it is 0.52. The second one is 0.035. So with all these things, we can only conclude that apart from speed, none of them are significant. So with this F value also you can check. If your significance level is good, then only you should check with your F level. So with this Wilks lambda and significance level, we are not sure whether this model will be a good fit. Now this is a pooled within group matrices. That means it will show you the correlation between all these elements, all these independent variables that I have compared, I have taken. So with all this individual thing, you will find out the correlation. So if you see, there is a low correlation between this because it's a hypothetical data, but you might not end up a result like this. You might end up in having correlation, a very positive correlation saying 0.5. Now, well, all these are positive, but the values are very low. So in this case, the correlation values are low. Okay, so nothing to do with this. The next one is box test of equality of covariance matrices. Now, well, this table is not important. The most important table is this one, the box M test results. Now, in this case, if you look at the significance, the first thing that we check is the significance value. Here, the significance value is 0.523. Actually, according to our significance value that we have considered 95% of confidence interval, it should be less than 0.05. Well, the value is much ahead of or much exceeding 0.05. So that is how this box M test result, according to this, the hypothesis that we have taken, we will reject our null hypothesis. The next table is the canonical discriminant function. Now in this case, because we have only considered a dichotomous string, that means we have only considered high and low. So in this case, we will have only one function. If you have considered three, suppose high, medium and low, then in that case, you will find out two functions, function 1 and function 2. Because we have considered two things, so that is how it is only one function. Now in this case, the most important thing is eigenvalue. Now what does this eigenvalue says? This eigenvalue lies in between 0 and 1. If the value is closer to 1, that means this component, that whatever discriminant function we are considering, all these independent variables have got a higher discriminant function or they are more positive towards this function. That means in this case, what we have considered is this brand reputation, speed, advertisement, safety measures and charging stations. Now all these things, they have high or they have low impact or low discriminant function. So in this case, the value of eigenvalue is 0.054. That means only 5.4%. If it is a good model fit, then you will get the values like 0.723 or 0.845, which means if suppose you are having 0.845, that means 84.5% of all these variables or all these independent variables, they have a function on the discriminant function which we are considering for buying intention. So whatever is your dependent variable, your independent variables and the relationship between the dependent variable is based on this eigenvalue. That how much percent is explained by this independent variables on the dependent variables. Now here it is very, very low, which is just 5.4%. Now the next one is Wilks lambda. Now here again the significance value is very less, which is 0.150. It is more than 0.05. So that is, and the Wilks lambda is 0.949. Is almost near 1. So based on this, we can say that this is not a good discriminant function. Now the next table is the standardized canonical discriminant function. And the standardized canonical discriminant function, In the standard, there are two functions. One is standardized form, the other one is also unstandardized form. Now with the standardized form, what we can get is, we can get all this. Now this 0.458, 0.492, 0.021, all these values are the power of the discriminant function. That means this brand reputation has got around 45% impact on this buying intention. Now this is how you can measure with this. Now in this case, if you notice, this is 0.458, 0.492. This is not in a proper way. When we consider the structure matrix, in the structure matrix, you will see that what it does is, in structure matrix, it puts you in the order of absolute size of the correlation. That means based on the increasing, based on the decreasing correlation, because if you see the highest point here is 0.492. And here if you notice, the speed is 0.732. The next one here is, after 0.492, it is 0.458. That means the next component which should come is brand reputation. If you see here in the structure matrix, after speed, again it is brand reputation, which is 0.672. Now after 0.492 and 458, the next one is 0.335, which is your safety measures. That means in the structure matrix, it should come in a decreasing order. The next one is a safety measures, which is 0.662. Now this gives, the structure matrix gives you a glimpse. At a glimpse, you can see which are the components or which are the independent variables they are having more impact on this discriminant function, that is on buying intention. So this is all about structure matrix. The next one is canonical discriminant function coefficients. Now with this unstandardized coefficients, we can find out our discriminant function. If you want to write a discriminant function, it will start with the constant. If you see the constant value here, which is minus 9.253. So the equation can be written as minus 9.253 plus into 0.563 into the total number of respondents plus 0.762 into total number of respondents plus till all these variables are complete. Now this gives you the discriminant function. Now the next thing is the function at group centroids. Now this is very important because in the low buying intention, you have this function as 0.153. And in the high buying intention, you have minus 0.346. So in this case, in order to find out a discriminant function, we need a divide rule. So this divide rule can be calculated on a simple formula, that is x1 into n1 plus x2 into n2 divided by n1 plus n2. Now in this case, the same formula for calculating the centroid. So in this case, what we'll do is, we will find out, now here we only see the high and the low. But what about the partitioning point? Where do we partition it so that we can say, okay, if any values, now suppose if my partitioning point is 0.000, that means from 0.000 to 0.153, all the values that lies, they are under the buying intention, they are under the low buying intention. And from those values, from 0.000 till minus 0.346, any value that lies between them, they can be considered as high buying intention. So based on this, we can calculate the centroid for these functions, and then we can discriminate saying that, okay, these are the functions which are in low buying intention and these are the functions which are in high buying intention. Now these all are not important. Okay, fine. Then the next thing that we have seen is, or that we have clicked on is your graphs. That the one which we have selected is a separate group graph. In the separate group graphs, you can find out for the low buying intention. The first graph is for the low buying intention, and the second graph is for high buying intention. In the low buying intention, you can see the number of n is 111, and in the high buying intention, you can see the number of the participants is 49. So based on this, you can have a graphical representation. Now this is the last table in discriminant analysis, which is very, very important. That is your classification results. That means in this table, it will tell you how much percent, like what is the percentage. If you see the first line A, 71.9% of the original group cases correctly classified. That means the classification that we are expecting, out of 100%, only 71.9% of this grouping is authenticated. If this value is more, that means we are having a good classification. So in this case, if you can see the count, because the first two lines are on the count, the number of count, and the second one is on percentage. So if you check with the original and the cross validated, now what it does is it predicts the group. That means out of, in the low buying intention, you can see 107 are there in the low and only 4 are there in the high. In the high group, again 41 are there in the low and 8 are there in the high. So a total of 111 in low buying intention and 49 in high buying intention. So with this, we can conclude that 71.9% of this classification is authenticated. Now in this case, I'll just switch to the data because we have, just a sec. Okay, fine. So we hope you remember that we have given an option that we want to see which are the discriminant functions. That means out of this 160 data, which are the one which are in low buying intention and in the high buying intention. Till this, you would have seen from occupation till the buying intention. Now after this, you find two more columns because we have chosen two things. One is the predicted membership. That means in this predicted membership, we see which are the participants or which are the cases which are considered as low and which are the cases which are considered as high. So in this case, the first one, the buying intention is low. You can see it is also grouped in a format of low. That means they are the one who are having low buying intention. Now based on all these calculations that we did, so 49 are there in this high buying intention and 111 are there in the high buying intention. And this is the discriminant function, individual functions for individual cases. So with this, we complete our discriminant analysis. Now let's go ahead with our cluster analysis. I'll just delete both the things so that, because with the same data set, we are going ahead with our cluster analysis. Now for cluster analysis, we have to follow again the same thing. In analyze, we have to go to classify. Now all these things comes under classify because both are the methods of classification. So in this case, the first thing that we have is hierarchical clustering. I told you there are three types of clustering in SPSS. So we'll be doing a two-step clustering. We'll be doing a k-mean clustering and the hierarchical clustering. So let us first start with the hierarchical clustering, in which we had this agglomerative and divisive clustering. So in this case, what we'll do is, now this label cases, it will only take the data which is in format of, if you notice here, we have taken all the data which is in format of numeric, excepting one, that is the brand. If you want to level the cases, then it should be done with a string type of variable. So that is how it will show me the data based on the brands. That means whatever brands I have considered, it will divide the group based on the brands, that who prefer which brand. Now in this case, in this variable, let me select all of this as my variables. Now in cluster analysis, the more the number of variables, the better the analysis is. Because this is actually not a proper analysis. What we are doing is, it is a pre-processing step. That means what we are trying to do is, this will help us in analyze, or this will help us in finding out the data which is important for us. Whether whatever we are looking for, whether we are getting that or not, that is only found by this cluster analysis. Now in this case, there is statistics. We can go ahead with the agglomeration schedule. That means it will give you an entire schedule how this agglomeration or how this process has happened. The same agglomerative technique that we have seen, it will go ahead with the entire process. We can also check with the proximity metrics. And now in this cluster membership, if you want a single solution, now here you can, there are three options actually. If you want a range of solutions, that means you want your cluster to be in a particular range. Suppose you don't want any of the clusters more than 5, but you want, again, the minimum number of clusters should be 1. So if you want to give a range, you can go ahead with this range of solutions saying that the minimum number of cluster is 1 and the maximum number is 5. But if you do not want this, you want a single solution, that means you are saying, no, I want 4 clusters. Now suppose you have collected a data for entire India. Now you have divided a region into 4 types. You have actually not done it, but thinking that in the mind, you have divided it. Now you want to see whether the characteristics of all these east, west, north, and south, they are similar or not. So in that case, you are saying my number of clusters, it should be 4. Because I should have data from east, west, north, and south. So in that case, you can define your number of clusters as 4. Or else if you do not want, if you want the software to do this for you, you can give it as none. So let me give this as none. The next one is plots. Now obviously I told you there is dendrogram which gives a graphical representation in cluster analysis. So let us see what is the dendrogram. Now in this case, again if you want to consider all the clusters or simply you want to see a limited number of clusters or you don't want to see any clusters, based on this you can click on here. So I suppose I don't want to see any of the clusters. I'll just check with dendrogram, or else let me click on all clusters. Let me see everything. The next one is method. Hope you remember all the things that we have discussed. All the single linkage, double linkage, centroid linkage, whatever we discussed in cluster analysis, all these things are there. The cluster methods, between group linkage, within group linkage, nearest neighbor, farthest neighbor, centroid clustering, Watt's method. Now these are some of the methods. Now the most common method which is used is centroid clustering. So let me consider this centroid clustering. Now again, based on your data, if you are having an interval data or if you are having a binary data, you can also choose your, now in this case it's the interval data. So here you have this Euclidean distance, squared Euclidean distance. This is the simple square of your Euclidean distance. Then the cosine theta distance. Then this is a normal correlation, the Chebyshev distance. Then Minkowski distance. This block is same as your chest. So these are some of the methods that we already discussed. So based on this, the most used in this case is this Euclidean distance. So let us consider that only. If you want to go with counts, then there are again two options. One is chi-square measure and the other one is phi-square measure. Now phi-square measure is again chi-square divided by n. That means the total number of sample and the square over it. And the square it over it. That gives the phi-square measure. So if you want to take the count, you can also go ahead with this. Now, if you want to have a binary data, that means here also you have different methods. Square Euclidean distance, size difference. Now, in most of the cases, because we have interval data, we always go ahead with Euclidean distance. Now, this is something which you can do now in this data. All my data are in a form of 1 to 5 in a Likert scale. If suppose I have collected data in which some of the numbers are in thousands, some of the numbers are in hundreds, some of the numbers are in tens. So in that case, I need to standardize them. So if I want to standardize them, either I can standardize based on Z scores or based on range from -1 to 1, because you want to standardize all these data. Now in our case, standardization is not required. So I'll not go ahead with this standardization. Now along with this, you can also check whether you want to check with absolute values or you want to change the sign. If it is negative, you can make it positive, or you want to rescale into 0 to 1. So based on your requirement, if your data is different, then you can go ahead with all these things. Then we click on continue. And the next one is save. In the save option, what it will do is, again it will add few of the components, or again it will add few of the columns to your data set. Like in the previous discriminant analysis, it added two extra columns. Similarly here, if you want to have, that means if you want to show all those number of clusters and all, it can include those clusters in your data set. I don't want that, so I am okay with it. Now in this case, I want to see both the statistics as well as plots, and now I click on OK. Hope all of you can see this. Now in this cluster analysis, the first table that I get is a case processing summary. That means in this, and it is done with the centroid linkage method. So the total number of participants are 160, or the total number of respondents are 160, and we have got no missing data, so it is 100%. Now after that, in the proximity matrix, you will see for all the data, that means for all this 160 data, it will give you a matrix. In this matrix, you will find out for each of this what is the correlation between them. So this is your proximity matrix. Now in this case, if you notice, just below it, it is written this is a dissimilarity matrix. That means the matrix that we have considered is not similar. The next thing that we see is the centroid linkage method, that is the agglomeration schedule. In this agglomeration schedule, if you notice the coefficients, if you check with the coefficients, those coefficients which are 0.00, that means they are the one which are actually useful. And if you check with the clusters, the number of clusters that is formed is 2 clusters. The first one is cluster 1 and the second one is cluster 2. So in this case, you need to check what is the difference. Please do check with these values. Now if you check with the values, these coefficient values, now initially it starts with 0.000, 0.000, then you see there is 1, then it is 0.957. Now if you see this difference, the difference between 2, if you see the difference between 2, if it is less, then it is not considered as a cluster. If it is more, if the value is more, from there onwards, it is considered as a second cluster. The rule is very simple. That means you will consider the first two objects that you consider, you will pair it up and you will say, okay, these belong to the same cluster. Now the third object when you are seeing, you will check whether it matches with the first cluster or not. If it doesn't match with the first cluster, it will take you to the second cluster. That means it will create a second cluster. Now in this case, doing the same thing, measuring with this distance, it calculated the number of clusters. That is, we are having 2 clusters. Now this is the number of clusters that we are having. Now this is more important, that is your dendrogram. In this dendrogram, if you notice, now what it has done is, the first 2, if you notice this line, the first 2, it has combined together and it has made one line. That means it has combined these 2 and kept it in one cluster. After that, it found the second one, the third one, that is 146 and 147. These are different from this cluster. So that is how it created a next cluster. After that, again, it found these 2, ether and ether. Now it found a similar cluster. So it made it a cluster. And so based on this, what they did is, they found the number of those clusters who are equal or they are nearby. They have put it into clusters, and after that, they have created the second cluster. Now this is the first cluster. The second cluster is, with this value, it found which value is having this link. So in this way, it creates your dendrogram. Now this is all about your hierarchical clustering. Okay, fine. So the next one is, we'll go ahead with the k-means clustering. Now again, this k-means clustering, now here you can define the number of clusters. Either you want to define the number of clusters as 2, 3, anything that you want, you can define it here. And along with this, you would like to take this brand according the case level, and all other, I'll consider it as the independent variables. Now in this case, again, in the iterate, what is the maximum number of iterations that you want? So if you want to click on, if you want to give any number, or 10 is also fine, you can go ahead with it. Then in the save, if you want to have a cluster membership, if you want to have a cluster membership and you want to see the distance between these cluster centers, because it's a centroid method, so if you want to see the cluster center, you can go ahead with this. Whatever you click on this save, that means it will be saved in your data set. Along with all this data that is available, it will be saved in the data set. So this is your cluster membership. Let me have only this cluster membership. In the options, you can have your ANOVA table, the initial cluster centers. The initial cluster center is not required. Let me have the ANOVA table and the cluster information for each of these cases. And I click on continue. Hope you see this. Now we are doing the non-hierarchical Now we are doing the non-hierarchical clustering. Now this is also known as quick clustering because the number of clusters that we have given is 2. You see there are 2 clusters here, and in this case you find there are total 5 iterations. There are total of 5 iterations that has been done. In this case, in this iteration history, we don't have much to do. Now the next thing is the cluster membership. Now in cluster membership, it will tell you which of these brands comes under which of the clusters based on the case numbers. That means the total number of cases, 160 cases. For individual 160 cases, it will tell you which of these brands are in which cluster. So it is a detailed description of these clusters. Now if you want to see we have also clicked on the distance, that what is the distance in this cluster. So that is also visible in this cluster membership. The next one is the final cluster centers. That means I want to see out of all my independent variables, what is the cluster and which has got maximum prioritization. If you see, the occupation has got 1.56 and in occupation in the cluster 2 is 1.34. So based on this, you can find out which cluster or what is the value of each of these independent variables on these clusters. Now in this, the most important thing is you can find out the highest value. And in this, the highest value is 4.33. That means your safety measures is one of the biggest important factor for your final clustering center. Based on the values that you are getting, if you compare in the cluster 1, in cluster 1, which are the most important clusters? Now, the first one is safety measures, followed by charging stations, followed by speed, followed by brand reputation, followed by advertisements, then gender, then the buying intent, then the occupation and the buying intention. So this is the way you can read this table. That is your final cluster centers. Now this is the distance between both the clusters, that is 1.770. Now we also get the ANOVA table. In this ANOVA table, we can see what is the relationship with this cluster. Now here again, the F value, the highest F value we get that is more significant, or that component is having more implication on this clustering. That means in this case, if you check with the significance level, you see there is 0.000 in 3 cases. One is with brand reputation, you see the F value is also high. One is with this advertisement, again the F value is high. And one is with charging station, here also the F value is high. That means for all the significance levels that we are getting, the F values that are higher, these are the things which are important for choosing a cluster. Out of all the variables that we have got, out of this, these are the important variables which helps in dividing the cluster. Now this is what we get, that the number of cases in each cluster. In the cluster 1, we have got 70 respondents, and in the cluster 2, we have got 90. So total of 160. So this is all about your non-hierarchical clustering. Now let's go ahead with the third clustering, that is the most easiest one. That is your two-step analysis. Now in this two-step analysis, again we need to go to analyze, classify, and we have to go to two-step cluster. In this two-step cluster, now what we'll do is all our categorical variables we'll put here and all our continuous variables we'll put it here. So in this, we'll click on all the categorical variables. Now, why we didn't include the brand? Because it's a string value, and we are only considering the continuous variables and the categorical variables. In this case, the distance measure is always the log likelihood. That is a method in which we calculate the two-step cluster analysis. Now, in this case, it is automatically taken 15. That means the maximum number of clusters we are expecting is 15. If you want to fix your clusters, you can specify it here. If you want it 2, 3, something like that, you can fix it here. Or else it will be by default on this determine automatically, where the number is given maximum 15. And there are 2 types of clustering criterions. One is BIC and the other one is AIC. The most common method is the Bayesian criterion, which is this BIC method. So we'll also go ahead with this. Now in this case, we have options. In options, if you want any of the variables to be standardized. If you want any of these variables to be standardized, you can click on all these things. If you do not want any of this, because our variables are already standardized, we need not make it. But yeah, by default, you will see that it will take it into standardized so that it gives you a standardized output. Well, we do not require any noise handling because in this two-step analysis, the good part is it will take care of your outliers. If any outliers are there, it will take care of that. Well, we don't want it here. Now in the advanced option, you can see some initial distance change threshold. That means if you are trying to, these are some of the advanced things which we actually don't require. If you want that, there should be a particular number of branches or there should be a particular number of, like you can decide upon the number of trees and the number of branches. Now this is something related to advanced which we really don't require. So let me avoid this and we'll click on output. Now in this case, if you want to see the pivot tables, you can click on it, or else if you want to see the charts. Now the one which we skipped, that is the brand. Now brand is here. So any variable which you have not considered but you want it to be evaluated, so you can take it here in the evaluation field. And if you want to create a cluster membership variable, you can create it. That means it will come here. Along with the data set, it will come here. Or else if you do not want it, you should not click it. And then we click on OK. I told you in this two-step cluster analysis, you don't have to do much. This is the only thing that we received in this two-step cluster analysis. Now you will think that what exactly is there? This was a report, right? So this is not a format of a report. So in this case, what you can do is you can double click on this. Once you double click on this, it will take you to another screen. Hope you can see this. It will take you to a screen in which the details is given. If you check with the model summary, now what we are using is, we are using a two-step algorithm. That means we are using both hierarchical as well as non-hierarchical methods. Now in this case, the 9, this input is the total number of variables that you are mentioning, that you have given for this analysis. And the number of clusters that is formed is 2 clusters. There are 2 clusters which is formed. And if you check with the cluster quality, if you see this, there is a poor, there is fair, and this is good. Now, if you are having your cluster quality in good, it is the best. If you are having it in fair, that is okay. If it is in poor, that means you need to reconsider either adding by new variables or else you can go ahead with some other methods. Now, in this case, you see to the right hand side, it will give you a, I told you that it is in a report format. That means it will give you all graphical representation. So in this case, there are 2, it will give you the details of it. The size of the smallest cluster is 70 and the size of the largest cluster is 90 because the total number of data that we are having is 160. And the ratio between this largest and the smallest cluster is 1.29. Now along with this, if you check here, now below you can also check, now by default it is on model summary. You can also click on clusters. Now once you click on clusters, you will see it will give you an importance table. Or this is the table which will give you which are the predictors or which are the inputs or which are the independent variables which are very, very important for determining the cluster. Yes. So in this case, if you notice, the most important thing that we received is advertisements. Hope you remember the advertisement. That was 0. The significance level was 0.000. So in this case, advertisement is the highest number. It is the benchmark for going ahead with this clustering. Followed by charging sessions, followed by brand reputation, followed by speed. You see lighter the color and the lower the importance is. So the last one which is having the lower importance is your gender. That means gender doesn't have much importance in this preparation of this clusters. But advertisement do have an impact on this clustering. So based on this, you can find out which are the variables which are more important to formation of a cluster. Now this is in the left hand side. In the right hand side, you can see there are 4 options. Now the first one is cluster size, which will give you the clusters. The second one is predictor importance. In this case also you can find the same thing as here. In this case you can find What is more important? Advertisement is most important, followed by charging session, brand reputation. So this is the graphical representation of how your predators are important. The next one is cluster size, which you have already seen. The third one is cell distribution. Well, there is no cell distribution here because by default, if you do not choose, there will be no cell distribution. And for cluster comparison also, because there are only 2 clusters, so it will not show you for cluster comparison. If you are having more than 2, it will show you a cluster comparison. With this, you can also see here, there are some options here below which are available. Now this will show you, hope you can see these colorful pictures. Now this will show you how important it is, or how the variations are. So based on this, you can have a report. Now with this, we complete our cluster analysis. So with this, I would like to conclude. If you're having any questions, kindly let me know. Well, I can see few questions. The difference between the logistic regression and the discriminant analysis. In logistic regression, we can have both the data, both the independent and dependent variables as metric, but in discriminant analysis, that one will be categorical and the other one will be metric data. Well, this quadratic and canonical discriminant analysis, what we discuss is canonical discriminant analysis because we are considering only the linear discriminant analysis. If you want to have more than two variables, and if you want to make it 3-dimensional, then you can go ahead with this other discriminant analysis. Well, this PPT is only limited with this session is only limited to the canonical discriminant analysis. Definitely, we can analyze any of the data on, it can be employee engagement, it can be any topic, wherever we want to go ahead with any kind of data in which, like either it is a pilot study or else you can, for this cluster analysis, you can definitely check this for your pilot study. And if you are planning to go for discriminant analysis, if you want to see the impact of all these independent variables on a dependent variable, then you can go ahead. If you want to have only 2 or 3, or you want to have maximum number of inputs from different groups, then you can go ahead with the discriminant analysis. Well, it is used mostly in market segmentation. When you are planning for market segmentation, or you are planning for seeing the high performers in, if you are in a HR domain, then you will look for the high performers in HR domain. So how you can do this? You can go ahead with this discriminant analysis. That means you want to see what are the factors that leads to a high engagement, or suppose you want to see what are the factors which leads to a high performer. You can definitely have a high performer and a low performer, and there can be different number of independent variables. Now, based on these independent variables, you can find out which is the most important factor that has an impact on this performance, the performance level of the employee, which leads to either high or which leads to either low. Yes, heterogeneous groups can be taken into consideration in this analysis, because that is what we are doing. We are taking a heterogeneous group and then we are trying to divide into smaller groups which are homogeneous in nature. It will be two groups will be heterogeneous. That means two groups will be different from each other. But within the group, it will be homogeneous. That means within the group, there will be similarity. Well, I'm not sure about this Gauss similarity coefficient. So I'm really sorry, I cannot answer this. I have just started with this discriminant analysis and cluster analysis. So I'm just naive in this sector. I'll definitely explore. If you are having any doubts, please drop me an email, which is at sonali@msrm.org. Hope you have got all the information. It was just a basic description because I wanted to give an idea what exactly is the discriminant analysis, what exactly is the cluster analysis, where to use it and how to use it. Okay then. Thank you so much.